All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Lisa Partida with Home Again LA, and today we have Tom Fuentes with Bank of Hope. Tonight's topic is going to be building your financial future. So I'll go ahead and pass it along to Tom.
Thanks, Lisa. So tonight's topic for financial literacy is building your financial future. This one's actually going to be kind of a fast one because it's four sections, but or five sections. I can't remember specifically, but the last two sections are specifically paying for college, which doesn't kind of fit the first three sections because what we're going to talk about is more like building your financial health and wealth through investing. Um, so we're more than likely will cut off at the end of section three. And then the fourth section is about building your financial health and wealth through education and training, which is kind of those two subjects are kind of very specific. So we're going to focus more on the asset and asset building portion of building your financial future. So what does that mean? So in the first section, we're going to talk about assets and asset building. Here we are here. We're going to explain what assets are, why they're beneficial, and how they can help build a financial future. And then we're going to talk about developing a plan to build assets and what that means. All right, so the key takeaway for section one, assets can lead to wealth and financial security. Of course, you need to have access to funds in the first place to even have this be a reality, right? But first, let's start with the building blocks and understanding, what actually is an asset in the first place, right? So an asset is something that you own that has a value. For something to be an asset, you must own it, be able to control it, and be able to make decisions about it. So for assets that are not money, you must be able to exchange them for money. So as we talk about different types of assets, let's think about different ways of thinking about assets. There's really three kind of classes or categories. There's physical, financial, and productive. When we think about assets in this way, we kind of need to um, kind of identify what that really means, especially when we talk about a productive asset. What the heck is that, right? So for like a productive asset, um, it's going to be uh, a way. It's like a tangible thing that you can do in order to produce the asset. So when we think about that, we can think of like a job as an asset. Your job as an asset gives you the financial means because your job is what gives you the funds that are necessary in order to purchase those financial assets, right? So let me back up. What's a physical asset? A physical asset could be something like your home, could be something like your car. It could be something of value that you resell, like jewelry, for example. Um, Financial assets are assets such as money that you have in your savings account, or a certificate of deposit, or a stock or a mutual fund that you may own, or your 401k. Those are your financial assets. And again, productive assets end up being something like, well, if I have a job, the income that I'm getting from my job is producing the money necessary in creating those physical assets. Um, so we have sections in the participant guide that you can check out after the workshop that will kind of better uh, allow you to understand the differences between the three categories. So we'll use this screenshot from the participant guide as an example. So is it an asset? And here we have listed computer, credit card, nursing degree, inventory in a business, your credit history, and then it kind of goes off and there's some other ones. So we can see the categories on the left. It's either yes, no, it depends, or notes for us to kind of think, what is it really? Um, so let's talk about some of these really quick, and then you can fill out the rest of them after the workshop. So is a computer an asset? Um, yeah, I would actually put a computer under a physical asset. I would put a computer under a productive asset too, because some of us need a computer in order to produce what it is for our job that we do that we get paid for, right? Um, is a credit card an asset? Um, I would probably put this in the it depends category. Um, the card itself is not an asset, it's a piece of plastic, right? But it can be a productive asset because it can allow you the ability to purchase assets, right? Of course, you have to pay that money back when you get your statement. So it's kind of like a meh, it depends, right? What about a college degree, or in this case, a nursing degree, as our example? Is that an asset? Um, yeah, I would say that depends as well, right? The actual diploma that's on a piece of paper is not really an asset, it's paper. However, what it symbolizes could be categorized as a productive asset because um, by having a nursing degree, specifically in this example, it unlocks the possibility that you would have the opportunity to get a job in nursing, which would then create the income necessary for you to have the resources to purchase financial assets. So I would consider that an asset. I would put it in the it depends, but it's a productive asset. What about if you're a small business owner or entrepreneur and you have physical, tangible inventory in your business? Is that an asset? Yeah, that's an asset because remember when we defined what an asset is, an asset is something that has value or is something that can be sold for uh
Oh,
for the purposes of getting money, right? So yeah, inventory in your business is certainly an asset. Anyhow, check out the rest of them in the participant guide and you can fill them out. Stuff that you're not seeing on here in the participant guide is lunch at a restaurant. Is that an asset? No, that's actually a silly example, but it's not. Renting an apartment is one that's going to be on there. On the job training, money in a savings account, your cell phone, things like that. But yeah, you can check those out. And then in the participant guide right here is another my assets. This is about you. Think about the assets that you or your family have, and then you answer the questions in the participant guide for this. The questions are, what physical assets do I or my family have? You're going to list them. And then it's going to be the financial assets that you have, and then the productive assets that you have. I find that writing these items down can help you identify things that normally you may not be thinking about, that you're like, oh, yeah, I have that. I'm going to put that in the physical category. And then it could be something that you didn't even recognize that you had, and you go, when's the last time I used that? Not in a while. Maybe I'll sell it, right? Um, so fill out that after the workshop. So let's talk about, now that we know what assets are, what are the benefits? Like, why do I want to build these things? What's the benefits of asset building? So asset building refers to strategies that increase the financial, physical, and productive assets that you own. The strategies may increase the value of assets you already have or help you acquire new assets. Being financially secure means you can take care of yourself and your family even if unexpected things happen. Financial security requires both income and assets. Job losses, an accident or illness, the breakdown of your car, or needing to take an extended time off of work are examples of potentially unexpected events that may require money. Assets provide a financial cushion to help you manage these unexpected events. God forbid they happen. Um, you can think of your assets as the foundation of your financial future. And we can think of a foundation being built strong, kind of like symbolizing of your house that you live in is on a strong foundation. Um, the pyramids in Egypt wouldn't be standing on the sands of the desert if they weren't built on a strong foundation. So we really need to think of this as um, before we're able to build, we have to have that strong foundation first. So assets are essentially to achieving long-term financial stability and growing wealth. So remember, it's just not the income you bring in, it's what you do with that income. We can go and spend it all. In fact, we could be in a situation where our income's not even enough to cover our debts and our and what we owe. So it's laying that really strong foundation that gives us the ability to even think about these concepts to allow us to build assets to build wealth are both required simultaneously. Okay. Owning assets. So owning assets creates a buffer. We kind of already talked about it to help you and your family handle emergencies and hardships if and when they occur. A reduction in hours at work or a job loss are examples of how your income can suddenly go down. A major illness, a broken refrigerator or washing machine are unexpected expenses that you're going to have to cover. Assets can help you make it through these periods of financial need. Um, owning assets helps you reach your goals. It's easier to further your education, buy a house, have income in retirement, or start a business when you have access to assets. Owning assets increases your options. Assets provide you with options, more choices for education, healthcare, where you want to live, the size of the TV that you have, and a lot of other things in life. Owning assets helps you earn more income and succeed in the job market. So owning physical assets like a car can increase your income and job prospects simply because you have the ability to accept a job that's further away from where you live, right? It makes it easier to get there. And you can unlock the potential for a higher paying job. And if you have that car as an asset, then you wouldn't have to rely on public transit. Not that that's a bad thing at all. A lot of us commute to work via bus or train or e-bike or e-scooter or whatever. But what I'm saying is that in fact that actually is a good example. Um, we could even distill this down to thinking of an e-scooter or an e-bike as an asset because while I live in a certain metropolitan area that think thank God I have the ability to own a car that when I have to go to the office, I have to go to downtown LA and I don't live uh, in the area. So I'm driving far. So it gives me the ability to have a job in a further distance. But think about the e-bike or the e-scooter for one quick to think about that as an asset. If you don't have any ability to use that type of transportation, you're reliant on public transportation. If you had like an e-bike and you lived in a city that was easier to get around, because maybe there was bike paths and stuff like that, you might be able to get a job that's 15, 20 minutes away from your house where you wouldn't even have to rely on the bus because you had your e-bike. And man, those things aren't cheap. You can pay 2,500 up to 5 grand for those. So it's interesting, like thinking about transportation as an asset too, right? Increasing your ability to get another job, a higher paying job, uh, outside of your direct neighborhood or where you live, right? Owning assets inspires you to look to the future and make long-term plans. Having assets and a plan to build more assets can encourage you to meet those goals that you're setting for the future. So thinking about the future can motivate you to plan for it, quite simply, seriously. access to assets which can just unlock that future looking self that you have, where you can go, I've got a little bit now, I've got a little bit more 5 months from now, 12 months from now. And then if you are building assets over a year, now you're thinking about 24 months, and now you're thinking, so it's like a snowball effect, where the future keeps, you keep thinking and you want to plan and build for it because you're able to look back at your past success and what you've done to build those up. Owning assets can reduce stress for you and your family. Households with at least 2,000 in assets that can easily be converted to cash are less likely to forego things like doctor's visits, missing utility payments, compared to other situations. Families who have assets feel less stress over financial issues. So knowing that you have something to fall back on can give you peace of mind. Many people pass their assets on to the family members, which could also provide peace of mind, leaving something behind for your kids and then for their kids, right? So developing a plan. So in the participant guide, we have a exercise that will help you to develop a plan to build more assets. And this is in the apply it section. Check it out after the workshop. Essentially what we have here though is, when you're filling this out, we're thinking having a strategy to build assets in those three ways that we talked about. The three ways that we talked about were physical, financial, and productive. And the activity can help you start to develop a plan on how you can start building these assets. So this part of the apply it section is going to ask a series of questions. I'll tell you what those questions are, and then you can check that out after the workshop. These are what the questions look like. So what additional assets would help me meet my goals? What resources do I need to get those assets? What specific steps could I take to get more resources, or to get those resources rather? What are some obstacles that may get in my way in building assets? And how will I manage those obstacles? So your strategy is going to vary and it's personal to you, which is why I would ask you to do this after the workshop. But in order to kind of understand how we would attack this as we're going through and filling out each question, let's provide an example that could be helpful. So what additional assets would help me meet my goals? So we'll use myself personally. So maybe I would think about what my goal is. And personally, at this moment, I'm thinking more about building assets for the purpose of retirement based on my age. So one of the things I could think about in order to meet that goal would be, is the job I'm currently in sufficient in having that plan become a reality? Does it pay enough for that goal? That would be the first thing. If I would say that my job is sufficient and that I make enough money, then I would move on to the next question. If my job wasn't enough, though, right away, I would know that maybe I need to start looking for another job or another career path. Does that make sense? Because we need to make sure that the income that's coming in is enough to even make that goal a reality. So what resources do I need to attain those assets? And remember, my personal goal is thinking about retirement. So the resources that I need to get those assets is more income. And a way I can think about this is that, okay, well, even if my income wasn't enough right now, does my job offer a performance increase annually? They do, thankfully, or a cost of living increase. So I would maybe factor in those cost of living increases over how many more years I have before I retire. Another way I would do it is I would ask myself, does my employer have a 401k match? They do. They match, I can't remember, but they have a match. I can't remember specifically what it is. But they do. Okay, so those are the two things that are going to help me. Those are the two resources I'm going to lean on to build those assets for the 401k. All right, so what specific steps could I take to get those resources? I kind of laid that out already, but there's more steps that can be had in order to build those assets for a 401k. Once I establish my 401k, I can then read the program and plan guidelines to figure out what investments I have to invest in over a certain period of time to build the assets necessary for retirement. So those would be the steps I would take. What are some obstacles that may get in my way? Some obstacles that may get in my way of this plan is, well, maybe my employer doesn't have that cost of living increase. Maybe my employer doesn't have a 401k match. Those could be obstacles. Maybe my 401k doesn't have the asset in it that I want to invest in. How would I get around those obstacles? Okay, well, if I had money left over after contributing to my 401k, after paying all my bills, even after putting some money into my emergency fund in my savings account, if I had a little bit of money left over, I would overcome that obstacle by just investing a little bit of money into the asset that I want. Not all 401ks will allow you to invest in a certain mutual fund or something like that. So I'll just do that on my own. And then how will I manage those obstacles? Again, I'll just take the power into my hands and I'll do the research necessary to figure out, hey, how do I invest in that high dividend stock that I wanted to invest in that my 401k doesn't allow? Oh, I'll do it on my own if I have a little bit of money left over. Anyway, so take that as an example for whatever your goal is. So that way you can go through and ask yourself those questions for whatever your goal is. Okay. That brings us to the close of section 1, where the key takeaway is assets can lead to wealth and financial security. And quite simply, again, I'm repeating myself, income and assets go together, but they're separate in the idea that the income is required in order to build those financial assets, for example. And the only way to build real wealth is to have the time to continually compound on adding those assets and building those assets. And we do that by investing in our 401k, by constantly putting a little bit of money in buying an S&P 500 mutual fund, for example. It compounds over time. I've got, oh, how many more years do I have until I retire? It's that amount of time, that building slowly over time, that's going to allow you to get that wealth. But remember, in order to do it, we have to have that firm foundation. And that's what we're going to talk about now, how assets create that foundation. So let's talk about building the financial foundation. So we're going to define net worth and explain how it relates to financial security and the ability to meet financial goals. We're going to talk about calculating net worth and identifying strategies for changing net worth, okay? So our key takeaway from section 2, net worth is a good measure of your financial stability. Calculate your net worth by subtracting your liabilities. Liabilities are money that you owe others from your assets. So let's talk a bit more about this and define some key terms. Assets, liabilities, and equity. So to understand how assets create wealth, you need to understand how assets are related to liability and equity. Again, we already defined an asset in section 1. An asset is something that you own that has value. To get assets, you sometimes need to borrow money. For example, to buy a house or go to college, you probably have to take a loan out. A liability is something that you owe others, usually money. So once you borrow money, you have the liability until you pay it back in full. Many assets, especially financial assets, do not create a liability. You don't have to borrow money to build a savings account, set aside money for whatever goals you have, build an emergency fund, contribute to your 401k, save for your education in a 529 savings plan, for example. Assets and liabilities are also related to equity. Equity is the value of an asset minus the liability related to that asset. It's the part of the asset that you own outright. We have an example in the participant guide with Ezra, who's making a car purchase. Whoops, sorry about that. Ezra's car purchase. Certainly check this out after the workshop, but essentially, Ezra needs a car to get to work and to school. He finds a used car at a dealership that's worth $5,000. He has been saving $25 a week for the past 6 months. He now has $600 to use as a down payment. So Ezra decides to take out a loan to buy the car. So how much money does he need to borrow? Well, he already has $600. And I don't know if we have a visual representation of this. No. So we'll just verbally talk about it. So if he's saved up $600, the car's $5,000. That means that he's going to have to take a loan out for $4,400. So what is Ezra's liability on the car purchase then? So remember, the liability is what Ezra would owe. So the answer would be that his liability is $4,400. What's Ezra's equity in the car once he drives it off the lot? Remember, equity equals the value of the asset minus the liability related to the asset. So the answer in this is $600. So he has $600 of equity in the car. It's essentially the $600 that he put down of his own money. Very simple way to think about this, the whole key terminology of assets, liability, and equity. But I think it does the job appropriately. There's one other thing, though, that we didn't talk about, and it's more related to a car purchase. It's depreciation. They always say once you drive the car off the lot, your car depreciates. So in our little equation or little formula that we just talked about, we didn't talk about depreciation. But depreciation is another thing that can eat away at your equity over time. Okay? Let's talk about net worth. So net worth is a measure of someone's financial wealth. Net worth is your assets minus your liabilities. It's what you have left over after you pay all your liabilities. Another way that you can think of net worth is the equity from all of your assets added together. So net worth equals assets minus liabilities. Value of net worth. Your net worth can be a positive number. It could be zero. It could be negative. A positive net worth means that the value of your assets covers all your liabilities, and there's still some left over. This means you have a cushion for financial emergencies, which is good to have in case something happens. But it's good to have a positive net worth. Zero net worth means that your assets equal your liabilities, which means that you don't have a financial cushion. It's a wash. You're just even, right? But it's not a bad thing either, because it doesn't mean that you're negative. A negative net worth means that your liabilities are greater than your assets, which means that you do not have a financial cushion at all. So yeah, that kind of ends up being bad. So calculating net worth in the participant guide, we have a situation where Justine is calculating her net worth. And the way that she's calculating it is with the home purchase that she just made. The current value of the home that she bought is $130,000, and she still owes $100,000 on her mortgage. She has $1,500 in her checking account and $500 in her savings account, which she uses for emergencies. She has a truck that she bought that she still owes money on. She has a credit card that has a balance. Um, so in the, and I don't, yeah, let's see. Yeah, so what we end up having here is a calculation of all of those figures. So remember what we're calculating. She has a home, um, she has the truck, she owes money on her credit card though, and she still owes money on the truck and the house. So when we add up all these things, we add up the value of the home, we add up the value of the car. That gets us to her assets of being 141,000. But then remember the liabilities. She still owes 100,000 on the house. She still owes 3,000 on her car, and she has credit card debt of 7,000, I believe. So her total liabilities are 119,000. So go back to our formula on how we calculate the net worth. We list assets and calculate the total assets. We list liabilities and calculate total liabilities. And then we take the assets minus the liabilities. So here we added up all the assets, we added up all the liabilities. We're going to subtract the two. And in this case, total assets minus total liabilities, the answer is 22,000. That means that Justine has a positive net worth of 22,000. But what you'll see in the participant guide is it in the diagram. So please check that out so that you can see each itemized item that I only verbally went over right now. And then further in the apply it section in the participant guide, we have filling out the table here is going to further help in calculating net worth. This is going to include things like your checking account, your savings account, if you have a 401k, if you own your car outright. It'll have a little bit more things that you can fill in based on your current situation in order to help you calculate what your net worth is in a similar fashion of how we did the Justine example. So increasing your net worth or changing your net worth. You can increase your net worth by increasing your assets or decreasing your liabilities or both. As we talk about how we do this, let's think about the different ways that we can. So remember, you can either increase assets, decrease liabilities, or you can do both. So what are specific ways that we can do this? We can spend less than we make. Sounds simple, but often hard. Buy less than we can afford. When buying homes, car, furniture, computers, and other things, buy less than you can afford. It provides you flexibility and prevents you from becoming overstretched financially. Save money. Building savings is building an asset. Save for emergencies and for your goals. Saving even small amounts of money on a regular basis can make a difference and can compound over time. Participate in your retirement savings program if you have a 401k match, for example, that we kind of already talked about. If you're self-employed, try to find ways to save for retirement as well. Please use debt responsibly. Remember that using credit cards creates a liability. You owe that money back after you make the purchase, and that decreases your net worth. Pay down your debts. As you pay down debts, your total liabilities go down. As your liabilities decrease, your net worth increases. Explore public benefits if you're eligible to receive them. You can go to places like benefits.gov as a good start to figure out if you qualify for certain programs. Using public benefits that you're eligible for can increase the total amount of resources for you and your family. Claim tax credits. You may qualify for tax credits that could result in a tax refund when you file your taxes. Another thing that I've always participated, well, not always participated in, but I've participated in for the last several years, and that thankfully the bank I work at now, Bank of Hope, participates in, is VITA, which is the program that is an income restricted program for people to get their tax returns filed for free. I can't remember the exact income for this year. I think you had to make less than 67,000 a year to participate in the program. I could be wrong. But just do a simple Google search and type in VITA, VITA. It's the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program. Look at what the requirements are. I don't know about you, but a lot of companies charge to get your taxes done, like H&R Block, Liberty Mutual, and all those places. Um, there's a way to get it done for free and done professionally, which is pretty cool. Check that out, VITA. Shop around. Shopping wisely can help you save money from products and services. You want to get a credit card? Shop for the best credit card. Google search it. You want to get the best TV? Shop around. Go to different websites like what's a shopping website that you can look that does reviews? Tom's Hardware, I think, is one that you can, if you're in the market to buy a TV, computer, cell phone, I'm pretty sure Tom's Hardware has reviews of different products. Possible. Yeah. Um, increase your net worth by building more assets. Economic security comes from asset compounding over time. If you've already started asset building, attend training, like a financial literacy workshop like we're doing now. Um, uh, if you're in the market to buy a house, for example, seek out a HUD certified counseling agency.
Mhm.
They're nonprofits, they offer their services for free. Um, yeah, so those are definite like kind of strategies that you can employ to uh, increasing your net worth. In the participant guide here is an exercise that you can check out after today's training, and it'll help you identify ways for you specifically to increase your net worth by increasing your assets and reducing your liabilities. Here we have, how can I increase my net worth? Think about increasing assets, decreasing liabilities, or both. How would these changes affect my financial future? So please check that out and fill out those sections. Um, it'll kind of help you build along the way. Um, I told you this one was going to be a little fast. Let me talk about the section closed, but I want to talk a little bit more. So in section 2, our key takeaway is net worth is a good measure of your financial stability. Calculating your net worth by subtracting your liabilities, money that you owe others from your assets. Which brings us to our close. And the reason is our next 2 sections, because this is a 4 section, specifically talks about things that are so specific. The next section specifically talks about cars. And then the last section specifically talks about going to college, which those in themselves could be separate workshops. Um, but while that brings us to the close of the topic of building your financial future, I do want to mention a couple more things before we totally close. And that is thinking about building your financial future in a time-bound sense. And what does that mean? So in other workshops, we always talk about doing our goal setting based on the SMART framework. And SMART is an acronym. It stands for specific, measurable, action-oriented, reachable, and time-bound. Those are the 5 things. Now, why is that important? And why was it not mentioned here? Well, building your financial future, one, is going to be specific to you and where you're at in a specific period of time. 20 years ago, I wasn't thinking about this stuff. because it wasn't anything on my radar. It just wasn't. I think we need to think about these things in a time-bound manner as I'm borrowing from the SMART framework, okay? The T, time-bound, meaning that if you're 20 years old, maybe you're 18, you decide that college isn't for you, you're going to go into a training program to get a certification in a specific field. You go get that certification and you start your job, and it's your first job. Are you really thinking about at that point in your life retiring when it's 45 years away? If you are, kudos to you. Bravo. But more often than not, you probably aren't. You're still thinking about trying to get a date for the weekend because maybe you want to start a family. So the reason I'm saying this and building your financial future is um, I recently turned 43. The older I get, the more my perspective is changing. I most certainly am not the person I was when I was 23, 20 years ago. I wasn't even thinking about the things I'm thinking about right now. So when we talk about building your financial future, if you find yourself in a situation right now where you don't have the ability, we'll say the income in order to turn that income into assets, by doing workshops like this and kind of changing your perspective and how we think on things, maybe by filling out the participant guide and going through those boxes and filling in the answers, you might end up finding out that, okay, well, maybe I needed to see it on paper for me to go, okay, what can I literally do to increase my income, to increase my assets? So it can kind of change your perspective, change your frame of mind. And I really think the time-bound aspect is important because, well, what the heck do I do if I'm 50 and I don't have the income necessary to even build that foundation that we talked about that gets you on the path to having the ability to build wealth? You know, so we kind of need to change our perspective and ask ourselves the questions that are hard questions to ask, hard pills to swallow, but may be the necessary thing to kind of light the fire underneath us to get us going on it, to at least get us walking down the path. Uh, anyway, so that's building your financial future. Happy to answer any questions, but really, the last thing I'll say too is that little tiny things compound over time. Even if you have the smallest amount of income left over at the end of the month, if you have 45 years until you retire, heck, if you're 50 and you're going to retire at 67, which is when you can start pulling Social Security, or one of the times you can start pulling Social Security, that's 17 more years that you have to
Mm-hmm.
start incrementally, very small, chipping away at putting money into a retirement account to get there. So it's possible, okay?
All right. Ah, it's so scary to think about retirement.
Or anything. I just
Yeah.
use that as an example
Well,
because the
yeah.
older I get, the more that's kind of on my mind, but it could
Yeah.
be anything, right?
Yeah, I mean any type of investment, I was just like trying to find the money, like the reserve of having enough to put away. Do you
Right.
know like for any like what your recommendation is as far as like investment accounts, or I don't know, let's say you have a Roth IRA or something,
Mhm.
like what's like the minimum recommendation of payment that you should make per month towards that if that's something that you have?
Luckily now, I mean, the only reason I even dipped my toe in the water of like a brokerage account that allowed me to invest was when I got like my very first paying job. The retirement was through Fidelity, which is one of the largest 401k companies in the world, I think, at least in the United States. Because I had that 401k with them in that first job, I was able to open up an account, which is called a brokerage account.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to put money into it. And by having that, you can invest in stocks, mutual funds, ETFs, bonds, the whole deal. So I think the first step, if you even want to dip your toe in the water, if you have a little bit of money saved after paying your bills are paid on time. I have an emergency fund set up. I have some money put in a savings account. If there's a little bit of money left over, look to see if you have a 401k or a retirement account with your employer. If you do, that means you already have an account at that institution, and they'll allow you to open up another account.
Mm-hmm.
So you can open up what's called a brokerage account, deposit that little bit of money into it, and then you can buy whatever assets you want. So that's
Mm.
the first kind of thing that you can do.
Okay.
The other thing is that you can literally open the account on your own. You can go to fidelity.com, vanguard.com. Um, there's a lot of different brokerage firms. They're not coming to mind right now. You
Mm-hmm.
can simply go to their website, figure out what the minimum deposit is to open a brokerage account, and you can do it.
Okay.
The reason I recommend the first way is because if you already have a retirement account, there's already money in there. There's usually not a minimum opening deposit.
Okay.
And then the other third way, which I don't love, is doing something like Robinhood or those smaller kind of firms that uh, really have no minimums. And the reason those are good is that something like a Robinhood account allows you to do fractional investing. And what I mean by that is if I wanted to invest in an S&P 500 mutual fund, specifically there's a Fidelity mutual fund called FXAIX. And that is like
I think I have that
two,
one.
right? It's very common.
Yeah.
And I think like right now it's maybe like $298 a share. So typically when you buy shares, you need to have the full value. But certain types of brokerages like a Robinhood and a Fidelity offers this sometimes too. If I only have $50, they'll allow you to buy a fractional share of it.
Okay.
Okay, so those are the steps.
Like baby steps.
Those are the baby steps.
Okay.
Those are the baby steps. And that gets you going. But then you need to do the research to figure out what the heck am I going to invest in? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at my Robinhood account. I'm like, I don't even know what I did. Is
Yeah.
eh.
And I would suggest if it's something of interest, because our topic tonight is building your financial future. I get a lot of my ideas and I do a lot of my own little education. I'm
Mhm.
not recommending this, but I'm kind of recommending it.
Mhm.
But don't take it as gospel. There's a lot of information on places like Reddit.
Okay.
So I subscribe to a couple of Reddit communities that are financial literacy based so that I can stay on top of my knowledge base.
Yeah. Okay.
So see if you can join a community in Reddit. There's communities called Boggleheads.
Boggleheads.
Boggleheads lets you know how to invest in a long-term strategy. There's dividend community. There's a whole bunch of different communities. There's a FIRE community, financially independent, retire early. Reddit could be a good resource.
Okay. I
Yeah,
found it already.
yeah,
All right, cool. All right.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Tom. We appreciate your time and we'll
All
continue
right.
next month.
All
All
right.
right.
Good night,
Have a good
all.
night. Bye.
See ya.